In this video, I am going to be discussing spoilers. In the description and on screen right now is a complete list of movies that I'm going to be discussing. Please proceed with caution. There are very few moments as powerful in cinematic history as that of a character dying. This is by no means a new occurrence. As long as people have been telling stories, death has been a major part of that. Film as a medium, however, allows for interesting stylistic decisions that can make an already powerful moment feel so much stronger. In this video, I will only be looking at killing a protagonist or a hero or a character that we like. So with that out of the way, let's start off by talking about purpose, and exactly what you can achieve through killing a character. There are three main things that this can do for your narrative. These aren't mutually exclusive and more often than not overlap with one another. The first is create suffering. This is something that most people are going to think of when they see a character's death in film. This usually creates suffering for both the audience, but also the other characters in a film. After we, as the audience, have spent the entire movie getting to know the character, it can be heart-wrenching to see them die. It is equally saddening for the other characters in the film, especially when we see a mentor character die. For example, in Star Wars, when Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan, this has the biggest effect on Luke. It installs a sense of hatred of Vader into him, a hatred that is going to last for the rest of that movie, all of The Empire Strikes Back, and all but the very end of Return of the Jedi. In the short term, this created suffering, but he was able to use this suffering to become a better warrior, and this pushed him along his journey into learning the Force. On the other end of the spectrum, when a character's death causes suffering, there can be long-term developmental issues that occur because of this. Let's take a look at Up, to see that at the very beginning of the movie, Mr. Fredricksen loves life until Ellie dies, at which point his life turns into misery when the film's story begins. The movie is about him trying to become happy again, as he spends time in Paradise Falls. The development is about him trying to love life again, as he's able to let go of his wife's death. The second way to effectively kill a character is to end suffering. This is usually going to occur at the end of the movie after we have already been inside the lives of these characters, and we realize that it's better for the narrative if the character is dead. At the beginning of Gladiator, Maximus had his entire family killed, and spends the entire film trying to find a way to kill Commodus, who of course had his family killed. Once Maximus is able to avenge his family, he's able to join them in the afterlife. This scene isn't as emotional because we are losing a character for whom we cared, but instead because he's able to see his family again. This is very similar to The Revenant, and I've already discussed that in some detail in another film dissection. There's a link to that on screen right now. But another way that a character's death can end suffering can be seen through Black Swan. Throughout the film, we see her pushing herself to try and become the best that she can be, as she tries to play the part of both the White and Black Swan. Throughout the film, we see her slowly deteriorating both physically and mentally as she hurts herself and has breakdowns. Exactly how literal this death scene is could be up for some discussion, but the way that I interpret this movie is that her life was dominated by suffering and unhappiness. She had a twisted sense of reality and believed that if she could become the Black Swan, then her life would have purpose. Once she does that, she sees no other point in living. American Beauty provides another reason in which killing a character can provide release. At the beginning of the movie, Lester wants to try to become happy, but he does so through superficial means, buying his dream car, working out to impress women, but he isn't able to realize what happiness is until the very end of the film. When he's contemplating what it means to be happy, we realize that in this movie there is an afterlife in which he's able to pass his message on to us as the audience. But the third purpose of killing a character is to help others through sacrifice. This is the most heroic death and is most interesting when compared with previous life choices. In The Exorcist, Father Karras is someone who rejected religion early in his life, but once he sees how bad of a condition that Regan is in, he knows that he has to do something. So he decides to taunt the devil into possessing him and leaving Regan once that happens. He kills himself, which in turn kills the devil within him. According to the film, this works in two ways. First, he redeems his faith as he admits that he was wrong, but actually does something about it. It also works as a way to solve Regan's problem and restore his own faith in religion. The Exorcist is about faith and seeing how far that will go when it's pushed, and this serves to show the strength of that faith. On the other end of the spectrum is the Iron Giant. The Iron Giant was created solely as a war machine, but once it meets Hogarth, it is able to develop free will, as it questions the morality of life and is able to develop just like a human being. The ultimate test of free will can be seen as it challenges what it is set out to do, which is to destroy. However, when a nuclear missile threatens to blow up the entire town, in turn killing the people that it loves, the Iron Giant goes against what it was programmed to do in order to save the people that cares for him and that he cares about. The Iron Giant chooses to save others, not because he was programmed to, but because that is the right thing to do. But let's discuss how to do it right. How to turn a moment that we have all seen hundreds if not thousands of times into one that we still remember today. Starting off with tone. The movie can have a very serious tone, one that is emotionally draining and beats you down. In Fruitvale Station, when Oscar is killed, this hard emotional blow is one to get the message across. There isn't any hope. It just shows one of the most tragic events that could happen. It's an incredibly powerful moment because it brings everything to a screeching halt. This serious tone is used to relay the powerful message of the film, but another way to do so is with a more lighthearted tone. In Forrest Gump, when Bubba dies, the movie becomes darker, undeniably, but just before, there is a comedic moment.
Something just jumped up and bit me.
And just after, there is a hopeful moment. This lighthearted tone is important because it keeps the audience invested without being too much of a drain on them. A lighthearted tone can be refreshing and can put the emphasis on other parts of the story. Forrest Gump is interesting because death reoccurs, and every time that it happens, Robert Zemeckis, the film's director, changes the tone whenever someone dies. Now, essentially what this does is make it so that death isn't the priority. This isn't a movie about death, but instead a movie about the life of someone else, and through the change of tone, that becomes the priority. But I love it when directors break the rules, when they take a conventional trope and turn it on its head. In Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock is able to implement this to throw the audience for a loop. We are first introduced to Marion Crane when she steals money from her employer. From there, she goes on the run, stops at a motel. Before the movie is halfway even over, she is killed. One of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history. But why would Hitchcock do this? Why would he kill his character when the film is still developing? Well, for one, it confuses and scares the audience. This is one of the first times in cinematic history when a main character dies in the middle of the movie. One of the things that Hitchcock did so well was taking a trope and using it to its advantage. When people expect one thing but see something else, it tells them that there is something unusual, that there is a greater force at play, that there is a character that we should not be messing with. This sets up the rest of the film so that we know to watch out for the murderer, that there is someone or something that doesn't follow the rules. Killing a main character is one of the most powerful tools on a storyteller's workbench. It can elicit emotion, it can change the course of the narrative, and when used correctly, create a moment that is forever going to stay with the audience. Next time you're watching a movie and a character dies, try to look past the initial emotional response. Obviously the scene is going to be sad, but in most cases it's going to be used for something more than that. This can be used as a very specific narrative device and is important to understanding the film. So those are my quick thoughts on killing a character. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section and see if we're on the same page or if you totally disagree with what I had to say. I would like to remind you to check out movierehab.com for reviews of theatrical releases, DVD and Blu-ray releases, essays, lists, and a whole lot more. Next week we are going to be looking at Steve Jobs, a 2015 movie with Michael Fassbender, not the one with Ashton Kutcher. That video is on the right of the screen, and on the left is my last video when we discussed Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window.